think about two levels, the level of particulars and the level of the universal. So this is beginning at least a contrast between individual horses, which can be observed and dealt with, right? Some are good, some are bad, and knowledge of horseness or equine nature. The question is, what's the status of this? And then a related question, how do we start here and end up here? What's the relationship between knowledge at these two levels? Now for Plato, this is the ultimate reality. This is the only true reality of horses, is the form of horse. And this is a shadow or reflection of that in the sensible cave world, right? For Aristotle, a different picture. Okay, the universal is present virtually and in a potential fashion in the particular. But I want to think first about the transition between these. Since if Hartley is correct, the universal is simply a confused picture of the particular. Aristotle holds science or knowledge, genuine knowledge, actual grasp of reality takes place at the level of the universal. All right, this is at least Aristotle. And it would begin down here in the sensible. We begin in the sensible, somehow we arrive at some sort of intelligible grasp of the idea, the essence, the equine nature, the formal cause. How do we do this? The reason I want to do this diagram is because I think from the perspective of the 21st century, there's been no change quite so profound in our conception of knowledge as the change from thinking about science as being the study of universal ideas to thinking about science as being the study of particulars. The sort of empiricist term. As empiricists and post-empiricists, we think about knowledge as being really pinned down in, beginning in, and in some sense, it's going to be reliable, but remaining in touch with the sensible and the empirical, the opposite of the observable. When somebody begins talking like a Platonist and saying, well, I've gotten out of the cave, I've transcended the mere realm of the senses, and now I grasp hoarseness with a capital H. Okay? Like the people who made fun of Plato, we're tempted to say, well, yeah, hoarseness, that's great, but really, no, I want to ride. I want to know something practical about horses. So I put this up here because I want to think about how we think about abstraction. And it seems to me it's going to be plain that there is a kind of abstraction from the particular to the universal. For Aristotle, it's going to be a matter of discerning intellectually the form that is implicit within each individual. I'm going to suggest here there's two steps, two logical steps to thinking about universals or particulars. There's an inductive step that takes me from particulars to universals. Then there's a deductive step. There's a deductive step that takes me from particulars, from my knowledge of universals to particulars. So here I might observe force 1, force 2, force 3, force 4. If I stay at the level of the individual and the particular, I only ever just pile up H's, H1, H2, H3, H4. The idea, though, is that somehow, after observing a sufficient number of horses, I grasp what they have in common. And to tell a sort of realist story, the Aristotelian story, I use this knowledge to grasp inductively the reality of H, right? Just H with no subnumber, not the first horse, the second horse, the third horse, but what it means to be a horse. Sort of, or maybe H0, the sort of archetype of all horses. Shadowfax, right? The form of horses. Think that all horses will ultimately. Once I've grasped this, and this has to be an intellectual grasp. It has to be my intellect that gets this. My senses feed my intellect. This process of abstraction. I'm calling it induction, but call it abstraction. I abstract. How do I get from H1, H2, H3 to H simplicity? Well, I have to do it by recognizing what it is that each of these things has in common. I'm looking for commonalities, but also breaking through to the metaphysical level. I'm moving from the sensible to the intelligible. If I simply make a list of the qualities that horses have in common, forelegs, hoofs, don't chew the cud, etc. I've not actually gotten to the universal form. But it's the universal form that I have over here, H, box H, I'll just call it. I'm tired of calling it something else. H in the box instead of a circle. It's this that I then apply to H15, H121, the next horses that I apply. How do I know that they will be like these other horses? Not because I have a sort of irrational prejudice that holds that all things that look like a horse will behave exactly like the horses I've seen in the past. This is a view we'll come to associate with David Hume. I just have a customary assumption. It sure looks like a horse, and I've seen horses before, and probably will behave the same way. That's trying to do this level of this reasoning without the universal, without the transition to universal. My application of box H to future numbered H's is deductive. Why do I know that this horse will eat hay? If that's the character of horses. That is what horses are like. That is their nature to do so. So I recognize these as members of this same species, members of the same genus, as holding this same, as instantiating the same nature. I say it's because I know the nature that I know what future occasions will be like. So my prediction doesn't go from here, this data set, to these new members of the data set. Right? That doesn't work on this classical Aristotelian view. Instead, it goes vertically up into the intelligible realm by reflection upon my sensible knowledge of the individual particulars, allows me through a process we need to understand more clearly, and hopefully next semester in epistemology we can talk about this in more detail, allows me to grasp box H, the ultimate nature of these things. Maybe imperfectly, maybe in a way that requires revision, but it actually is the nature of the thing. And that then allows me deductively to make predictions about the future. So where is my knowledge? Begins here, is perfected up here, and then is applied back down to here. This seems to me to be very different from a view holding that science takes place only at this level. Anybody sort of departs from this to try to find anything other than sort of laws of nature which express a regularity on this horizontal level, that's idle metaphysical speculation. Mr. Locke.